All right, ladies and gentlemen. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about Ubisoft. So Ubisoft apparently was working on an Assassin's Creed game that was going to be set around the time of the American Civil War. Now, this is something that we've known for a while. This has been rumored for a long time. We just didn't know much else other than there was rumors of it being set in the American Civil War. We actually knew about this before Assassin's Creed Shadows was even announced. This was something that's been going around for a long time. However, apparently, there is now reports that the game has actually been canceled. And the reason why the game was canceled will make you laugh your ass off. Apparently, Ubisoft, the company that made Assassin's Creed Shadows, the company that made Yasuke into the hulking smash, mega soldier that he was, or mega samurai that he was, apparently is too scared of American politics now. Apparently, they believe that the political turmoil in the United States of America is just too crazy. And because of the backlash they received from Yasuke, which I thought that they said was minimal, I thought everybody was saying that most people didn't care and that it wasn't a big deal and that it's only like a small fringe group of gamers. Well, apparently that's not the case. Apparently the backlash was in fact massive. Apparently gamers were right the entire time. And because of that backlash with Yasuke, they don't want to continue development on this game anymore. And they have canceled this game. So let's go over this article from PC Gamer talking about this because I'm very curious what's going on here. It says the game was meant to take primarily during the Reconstruction era and would have featured a black assassin confronting the emergence of the Ku Klux Klan. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay. So I can see why they potentially didn't want to go through with this video game, considering that you were going to have a black male lead assassin that was going to be fighting the Ku Klux Klan, right? I guess they wanted to take down those evil whiteys. Anyway, a new game file report claims that Ubisoft canceled an Assassin's Creed game that would have been set in the U.S. Civil War and the Reconstruction period that followed. According to the game file sources, the decision to cancel the game was made in 2024, in part because of the backlash against the reveal of the Black Samurai Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows, but more pressingly over concerns about the current political climate in the United States. Now, again, guys, I find it ironic. I really find it ironic. Maybe it's just because they didn't want to kill Democrats, right? Historically, maybe they realized, oh shit, perhaps we should not be killing Democrats if we ourselves claim to be progressive and Democrats. So maybe that's not a great idea. But yeah, they clearly were probably going to do this, and they probably designed this around the same time they designed Assassin's Creed Shadows. Keep in mind, Shadows was thought of as a concept and started production in 2020, which is the year of DEI, right? Everybody knows that in 2020, after what happened with George Floyd, every company and their mother started investing into diversity, equity, and inclusion. They started having DEI teams. They started having DEI officers. They started having DEI mandated reports. They started having all this nonsense in their companies. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like this was thought up around that time as well. We don't know for sure. I'm just thinking, I'm thinking through my head what could possibly or when it possibly could have been thought up. But I got to imagine it might have been close to around that year, right? 2021, maybe 2022 at the latest. But who really knows? But again, the game was going to apparently tell the story of a formerly enslaved black man who, after moving west to start a new life, is recruited by the Assassin Brotherhood. Following that, he will return to the U.S. South, coming into conflict with groups including the emerging Ku Klux Klan, the white supremacist hate group that continues to operate today. Yeah, next thing you know, they're going to tell you the party switched. The game was in the concept phase and years away from release when the cancellation occurred, but work was reportedly underway on the game. I'm sure the developers over at Ubisoft must have had so much fun developing this game. Even if it was only at the concept, I'm sure they had a great time drawing up all those evil white supremacists. I'm sure they probably put Nazi symbols on their shoulders or something like that. I'm sure they even probably made them make references to Trump, even though Trump would have not been around that time. I'm sure they would have snuck that in at some point anyway. It's unbelievable. I honestly wish they came out with this game. I'm not lying to you. I feel like they should have came out with this game. I would have loved to see this go down. The headlines would have been amazing. This would have made content creators gain a minimum of 20,000 subscribers before the entire news cycle finished. I really do wish they came out with this, but that's okay anyway. game file sources, all either current or former employees of Ubisoft, said that developers were enthusiastic about the game. You see, exactly. Of course they were. Of course they were enthusiastic. You mean to tell me that a bunch of progressive Democrats in these studios couldn't wait to make a video game talking about killing white supremacists? Of course they were excited. Why would anybody be shocked by that? Unironically ignoring the history of the Klan, but regardless, it is what it is. So apparently, which some had felt had the potential to make a positive social impact. Yeah, I'm sure that would have made a real positive social impact. But despite initially being approved by Ubisoft leadership, it was eventually decided that the subject matter was too controversial, especially now as the Trump administration makes moves to walk back civil. Oh my God, PC Gamer can't help themselves. PC Gamer cannot help themselves. They have to do it. They have to do it. The Trump administration makes moves to walk back civil rights legislation and restore honors and memorials to the Confederacy, which fought to maintain slavery during the American Civil War. One source said it was too political in a country too unstable to make it short. Guys, I got to tell you, man, it's amazing how they don't. You either don't read a history book, right? You don't care to read a history book, or maybe you're so inundated with social media content that is based around revising history to fit whatever social bullshit you want to fit. At the end of the day, man, you can have a problem with history, but you also have to confront it if you ever want to learn from it. You guys are so busy trying to either hide from it or revise it to fit your little bullshit narrative that you spend all this time doing that only to end up getting felted by it in the future anyway, because you repeat the same history, you repeat the same mistakes, you repeat the same nonsense, right? So in any case, while some of the game was meant to take place during the Civil War itself, the bulk of it would have been set during the Reconstruction era, the decade plus that immediately followed. While Reconstruction was intended to address matters like granting citizenship to former slaves and reintegrating former Confederate states into the restored United States, the process faced furious and often violent resistance from whites in the South, which ultimately undermined it. What kind of whites, by the way? What kind of whites? Reconstruction was formally ended in 1870. You notice how they don't tell you? They don't tell you which kind of white people were fighting against the Reconstruction. They don't tell you, right? They don't specifically tell you that Democrat white people were fighting against it. They only tell you it's whites. They don't tell you specifically what kind of whites. They also leave out the fact that there were white people that were fighting to free the slaves. So you had white people fighting to free the slaves. You had white people fighting to keep the slaves. But they don't tell you what kind of white people, because that would be a little bit problematic, right? That would be something that they don't necessarily want to talk about. History becomes a little bit problematic when you realize that you are on the same political party that had slaves in the past. But again, they're going to say, well, the party switched. Miss me with that bullshit. Anyway, it is, in other words, an interesting fraught topic in the U.S., a point driven home by the reaction to Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows, which was ugly, to put it mildly. They don't realize, well, actually, they do realize, they're just being disingenuous about it. They don't realize, or they're being disingenuous, that it's not about, oh, it was a black person that was a lead. That's the problem, right? It was about the simple fact of you are taking a culture and a history, and you decided to look through the history of Japan to desperately find anybody that was remotely not Japanese as a samurai so that you can make your game with that particular samurai. That's the problem. You went and jumped through fucking hoops to ensure that the samurai in a game that showcases a samurai was not Japanese. You made sure of it because there was so many samurai that you could have based your story off of. You could have brought back any samurai in history. You could have brought them back to life and had your way with the game. But you were like, no, I need to find the one samurai that actually existed, right? Well, I'm sorry, not even a samurai. The one non-Japanese person that existed around the time of Oda Nobunaga that could have potentially been labeled as a samurai, but wasn't, obviously, according to the historical context. Again, I don't want to revise all this bullshit. All I want to say is that you went through hoops to ensure that that mission was fulfilled, because you made up this concept in 2020 during the year where this shit was running rampant, right? And the problem is that with video game cycles, they take so long for it to come out that by the time it came out, what you thought would have been a slam dunk idea, a black samurai being the lead of a Japanese Assassin's Creed game, you thought that was going to be a slam dunk. And then you ended up releasing it only for people to realize this is absolute trash, because culture changed faster than you could develop the game. And by then, you already invested too much money. You couldn't change your mind. You couldn't go back. You couldn't backtrack. So this is what you thought was going to happen, but unfortunately, that's not what happened for you. It is, in other words, an intensely fraught topic. Again, ironically, the people who actually make those games seem less reticent about standing up for themselves and their hard work, but they're not the ones who make the final decision about what does get made and what doesn't get made. Even the CEO said in September 2024 that our goal is to not push any specific agenda, which we all know that's not true. Okay, we all know that's not true. Ubisoft's self-professed apolitical bent goes back much further than Assassin's Creed Shadows. Despite making games that look like from a distance like they might have something to say, Far Cry 5 leaps immediately to mind, but it's far from alone. Ubisoft has repeatedly insisted in the past that it does not make political video games, but there are limits to how long you can maintain that no politics facade, and making a game about a black assassin during Reconstruction would unavoidably be a way beyond them. Well, that's because we know it's bullshit. Even the journalists at PC Gamer know it's bullshit. Everybody knows Ubisoft being apolitical is a bullshit statement. Yeah, that is an absolute bullshit statement. Nobody's believing that in the slightest, right? So what does this bring us? This brings us to a point where, unfortunately, content creators, we are not going to get a Assassin's Creed game with a black lead in the Civil War killing Ku Klux Klan members. We're not going to get that. I'm sad. You're sad. We're all sad. We know that. But truthfully, I feel like they should have made this game. I really do. I feel like they should have made this game, not even just for content purposes, but just because, listen, man, we already know that this is what you guys are about. So let's stop trying to pretend that this is not the case and just go all in with it. And let's see where the numbers fall. Right? Let's see where the numbers fall. You're going to release the game. We all know you would have released the game anyway. You would have said you had 5 million players engaged, and then you would have stopped talking about it, just like you did with Shadows. You never once released the numbers. You never once released the sales because we all know it didn't look good, just like what's happening with Ghost of Yotei right now. So we'll see what ends up happening with this. If any more information comes out about this, maybe there'll be some leaks with concept art, like what usually happens when games get canceled. But you guys let me know in the comments down below. Would you have liked to see an Assassin's Creed game in the Civil War with a black assassin lead killing Ku Klux Klan members? Would you have loved to see that? If you would have, let me know in the comments down below. And if you wouldn't have, also let me know. Thank you so much for watching this video. And if you enjoyed it, consider hitting that like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys on the next one.